The nurse stood in front of me, hands folded together like she was holding something fragile. Her voice barely made it out, soft but trembling. "Jack, the surgery went well. Your son is stable." But he kept asking why no one came to see him. For a second, the words didn't land. They just floated there, weightless, like dust caught in sunlight. Then they sank. Hard. I looked past her, through the small glass window where my son lay in recovery. A tiny body in a bed too big for him. Machines beeping slow and steady. A soft stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm. His chest was wrapped in white. Gauze, little chest, little heart, freshly stitched. And he asked for them. My mother, my father, my sister, the people who raised me, shaped me, told me family was everything. The nurse waited for me to speak, but my throat felt sealed shut. The kind of silence that hurts to swallow. I lowered myself into the nearest plastic chair. The hallway was cold, too bright, too clean. The fluorescent lights hummed like something tired of being awake. The floor tiles were polished so well I could see my reflection staring back at me. Eyes dull, skin drawn, years of giving carved into the lines around my face. For 6 hours, I sat through the surgery. 6 hours of pacing, 6 hours of bargaining with every god I never believed in. 6 hours of holding onto hope like a rope over a cliff. And not one message, not one knock on the hospital door, not one voice saying, "We're here." I replayed memories that suddenly felt like lies. My father calling me the strong one. My mother saying, "You're our blessing." My sister hugging me and whispering, "You always save us." It all used to feel like love. But love given with conditions isn't love. It's a contract no one remembers signing. The truth was slow and cruel. I wasn't the strong one. I was the useful one, the one who paid, fixed, solved, covered, rescued, and somehow, somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing me as a son or a brother. I became a bank account with a pulse. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes, and in that stillness, a quiet realization settled over me, heavy and irreversible. Something had changed, not broken, not shattered. No, something inside me hardened. A door once open, now closed. It didn't slam, it just clicked, locked, done. My son was recovering from someone, opening his chest to save his heart, and my family couldn't be bothered to open a door and walk in. That was the day I stopped being theirs. The first night after the surgery, I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I sat beside my son's bed, one hand resting gently near his, careful not to disturb the IV lines taped to his skin. The room was dim except for the soft glow from the monitor lights, blinking like tiny stars in a dark sky. Every beep was a reminder that his heart was fighting, repairing itself stitch by stitch. He stirred once, only half awake, eyes heavy and drowsy. "Dad, did Grandma come? Grandpa, Aunt Lily?" His voice was small, not sad, just expecting something that made sense in his world. Swallowed down something sharp and burning. "Not yet," I whispered, adjusting the blanket near his shoulder. "Rest. I'm here." He nodded. Like that was enough, like I was enough. He didn't understand yet. Children don't understand emotional debt. They don't understand that sometimes the people who should love you most only show up when it benefits them. But I understood, and the longer I sat in that chair, the more memory after memory unraveled itself in my mind. The night my father called, voice shaking, telling me his business was collapsing, and I drove across the city with everything I had saved, placing it into his hands without question. The months I spent paying for my mother's treatments when her insurance failed, holding her hand through clinic rooms, telling her she was going to be okay. The day my sister tore her car to pieces in an accident and cried in my arms, and I told her, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." The next morning, I signed the dealership papers for her new car. I didn't do those things for praise or for repayment. I did them because they were family, and I thought, foolishly, that love given with sincerity grows, roots and returns. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The thank yous became expectations. The appreciation became entitlement. And the son I was turned into the provider they depended on. I didn't notice the transition until now, and now I couldn't unsee it. Around 3 a.m., I stepped out into the corridor for water. The hallway was empty except for the muted sound of nurses' shoes whispering against the floor, calm and rhythmic, life moving even when yours feels Paused. My phone buzzed. Not a call, not a message, just a reminder from earlier. Family group chat. Wedding planning day. They were somewhere, laughing, celebrating, shopping for silk and champagne, probably taking pictures, clinking glasses, smiling for cameras, while my son lay, breathing through pain, while I sat alone, listening to the sound of machines keeping rhythm with his heart. Leaned my back against the wall, head tilted up, letting the ceiling light wash over me. Not a tear came out, not because I wasn't hurting, but because something in me had moved past sadness, past anger, past disbelief, into clarity. I understood now. I had been loving them in a way they never loved me. I had been loving them in a way they never loved me. I had been showing up for people who didn't know how to show up back. And love without return is not love. It's erosion. Piece by piece. It wears you down until you forget who you were before you began giving. I walked back into the room and sat beside my son again, my fingers gently brushing through his hair. This child, this tiny human who thinks love is simple and soft. He deserved better, and I would make sure of it, starting with the moment they asked for something. Again, because they would, they always did, and next time, the answer would not be the same. The door inside me had already closed, locked, sealed, quiet. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. 3 days passed in the hospital, the kind of days that blend into each other, where time isn't measured by clocks, but by nurse check-ins and medication schedules. My son recovered slowly. He smiled at me more each day, and every time he did, something inside me loosened just a little, only to tighten again when I remembered who didn't walk through that door. I didn't mention the absence to him. Children don't need the sharp edges of adult truth. Not yet. But silence has a way of echoing, and their silence screamed. On the third day, I sat in the reclining chair the hospital offered, my spine aching from sleeping wrong and not sleeping enough. My phone vibrated in my pocket for the first time in days. I thought maybe they were checking on him. Not an apology, not a visit, just a message saying, "We thought of him." That alone would have been something. Unlocked my phone, a single text from my mother. Not, "How is he feeling today? Is he in pain? Did he ask for us? Are you all right?" No, just, "Need $10,000 for your sister's wedding dress." I stared at the screen. The words didn't shock me at first. They floated, soft, weightless. Then they hit, like a fist to the chest already. Stitched, $10,000 for lace, for silk, for special fabric imported from Italy. No doubt, they always had reasons, justifications, elaborate stories that made spending my money sound like a family responsibility. My thumb hovered over the screen. My son's breathing was shallow, gentle, steady. His hand, small and warm, rested over mine, the bandages covering. His chest rose and fell with every breath, proof of the battle he just fought to stay alive. And my mother chose this moment, this exact moment, to ask for money like I was some kind of endless faucet. No questions, no concern, no acknowledgement of the hospital room they didn't step into. Just the dress, just the wedding, just the want. The nurse entered quietly, checking my son's IV lines. She glanced at me and paused, noticing the look on my face. Something between disbelief and understanding. She didn't ask, she didn't need to. Some pain is visible without words. I typed a response, not angry, not emotional, just a simple sentence. "I can send $1 memo by a veil." I hit send, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there are moments where you have to choose yourself, moments where you stop being the ambulance that arrives every time someone else crashes. I stood up, stretched my shoulders, and took a long breath. Palms were calm, my heartbeat steady. This wasn't revenge, this was awakening. For years, I believed love was proven through sacrifice, through giving, through saving. But sitting in that room, watching my son heal, while the people who should have stood beside us shopped for luxury, I realized something with painful clarity. Love is not measured by how much you give. It's measured by who shows up when it matters, and they didn't. So I opened my laptop, logged into the bank accounts, the ones I'd opened to help them. The ones they used freely, vacations, hotels, spa days, holidays that somehow always included flights and shopping and fine dining, but never included me. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I began freezing. Access closing credit. Lines revoking permissions. 1 click at a time. No hesitation, no drama, no second thoughts. The door had already closed. I was simply locking it by the next morning. The consequences had begun their slow, predictable ripple. Was pouring lukewarm hospital coffee into a styrofoam cup when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the bank's name. I already knew why they were calling. When you've spent years paying other people's bills, you learn the timing of their panic. I answered. The bank manager's voice was cautious, the kind people use when they're afraid of stepping on something raw. Mr. Carter, your parents and sister came into the branch this morning. They were upset. I imagined the scene clearly. My mother dramatic, hand to her chest as though betrayed. My father quiet, simmering under the surface. My sister angry in that entitled way, and the kind of anger that comes from never being told. No, the manager continued, choosing words like someone navigating broken glass. They said you cut off their funds without warning. They're asking for an explanation. I stared at the wall in front of me. White paint, no. Texture, flat empty, just like their concern when my son needed them. Didn't raise my voice. I didn't sigh. My tone was steady, too steady. I didn't cut them off, I said. I corrected a mistake. There was silence on the other end, the kind that stretches, the kind that says he understood more than he was allowed to say. Shall I note that they are permanently removed as authorized users? Yes, I replied. Mark it permanent. Another small pause. Then a soft, respectful, understood. When I hung up, there was no rush of relief. No surge of adrenaline, no lingering doubt, just quiet, a clean, calm quiet. I returned to my son's bedside. He was awake now, coloring slowly in a sketchbook one of the nurses gave him. His drawings were uneven and wobbly, but full of concentration. A dinosaur, a sun, a house, always the house. He looked up at me and smiled, a small, tired smile, and something in my chest loosened. Again, that's when my phone buzzed, the family group chat. Mom, how could you do this to us? Of course, do this to us, not what happened. Are you okay? How is my grandson? Just the loss of comfort, the shock of being denied access to what they believed was theirs. Dad, your mother is crying. Be a man and fix this. There. It was the appeal to duty, the guilt, script, the emotional leash they'd used for years. My sister, you are ruining my wedding. I can't believe you'd be this selfish. Selfish. The word sat there. Almost ironic, I didn't reply. I didn't type anything at all. I let the messages pile up, one after another. Panic disguised as anger. Dependency disguised as outrage. Guilt disguised as love. The phone buzzed and buzzed. The vibration steady against my leg. Like something desperate trying to claw its way back in. But the door inside me was shut, locked, silent. That night, when the buzzing finally stopped, I sat at the small hospital desk and wrote 3 separate messages. Not emotional, not defensive, not pleading for them to understand. Just the truth. 3 days ago, my son had open heart surgery. None of you came. None of you called. But you remembered to ask for money. Consider the accounts closed. Consider this, the end of that version of us. I didn't wait for responses. I blocked each of them, not out of anger, but out of protection. My son deserved a father who wasn't exhausted from bleeding himself dry. Deserved a family built on love, not debt. He deserved peace, and so did I. The silence that followed was strange. Not peaceful, not empty. It was the kind of silence you feel in your bones. Like the world had shifted an inch to the left, and you were now learning how to stand. Again, for years, my phone had never stayed quiet. There was always a request, a crisis, a quick favor, a reminder that they needed something and I could provide it. Now, there was nothing. Days blurred into one another. Hospital, mornings, small walks down the hallway with my son holding my hand. The doctor said children heal faster than adults because they don't hold pain the way we do. They let it pass through them and keep moving. He did just that. He laughed again. Small, tired laugh, but still a laugh. Sometimes he would draw while I sat beside him little pictures of us, always holding hands. He drew family, the way a child believes family should be. Together, he didn't know yet, that blood can disappoint you more deeply than strangers ever could. Week after the surgery, we were cleared to go home. I carried his overnight bag and he clutched his dinosaur against his chest like a shield. His steps were slow, careful, but determined. When we walked out those hospital doors, I didn't look back. Some doors don't need to be revisited. Life didn't snap back to normal. It stretched itself into something new. Mornings were quieter, evenings softer. We cooked simple meals. We watched cartoons. We sat together without speaking, just existing in the same healing space. But the silence wasn't only in our apartment. It echoed from the outside too. My family had stopped calling because they no longer had access to what they wanted. But silence doesn't mean absence. It leaves space for whispers. Whispers found their way to me, eventually, through cousins, through neighbors, through social media. I didn't bother checking, but somehow still heard about. I learned that my parents sold their second car, the one bought on emergency funds during a vacation to Dubai. My sister postponed her wedding, not because of heartbreak, but because the dress fittings couldn't continue without the deposit. They didn't tell anyone the truth. Of course they didn't. They said I had lost myself, that I was unstable, that I had turned my back on them after everything they did. They always loved rewriting stories where they were the victims. But people notice things. They notice who shows up, who doesn't, who takes, who gives, and slowly, very slowly, the narrative around my family began to change. Not loud, not dramatic, quiet, the way real consequence often arrives. Meanwhile, I kept caring for my son. Bandage, changes, medication schedules, checkups, healing, in small steps. One evening, we sat on the couch. He was coloring again, always drawing, and he paused, leaning his head slightly to the side like he was thinking hard. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Dad, where's Grandma now?" There was no sadness in his tone, just curiosity. The kind children use when asking why birds fly or why the sky is blue. I let the quiet settle for a moment before answering. "Far away," I said. He nodded, accepting that. "Will she visit us?" I could have lied, could have created a softer world for him to grow inside of. But I'm done teaching him love that hurts. "No," I said, "not anymore." He thought about that, then simply went back to coloring. His small shoulders softened, his breathing steady. His world didn't crumble, because in his mind, he still had what mattered. He still had me, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Healing didn't happen all at once. It arrived in pieces, small moments that didn't look like change until later, when I realized they were the foundation of a new life. My son had follow-up appointments every week. I drove us there slowly, careful over every bump, one eye always on him in the rearview mirror. He held that same stuffed dinosaur every ride, as if it protected him, and maybe it did. The doctors said his heart was strong, stronger than they expected. Kids are resilient, they always say. But I think he was resilient because he was loved, loved without conditions, loved without being useful, loved simply because he was mine. At home, I found myself relearning the shape of silence, not the heavy silence of abandonment, the one my family left behind. This silence was gentle, soft, a place to rest. Didn't miss the constant phone calls. I didn't miss the requests disguised as emergencies. I didn't miss being needed for everything except the moments that mattered. I didn't miss pretending I was part of a family that only loved me when I was beneficial. And the unbelievable thing was, life didn't fall apart when I stopped giving. It got clearer. I started cooking again. Real meals, not fast food eaten in the car between errands and favors. I began reading bedtime stories every night. He would fall asleep holding my hand, as if making sure I was still there. I always was. On weekends, we went to the park, slow walks, soft conversations. Sometimes he asked big questions in small ways. Why do people stop loving? Can love run out? Do hearts grow back stronger? I didn't have perfect answers, but I answered. Honestly, love doesn't run out. It just changes where it goes. That's why we take care of our hearts. That's why we choose who we keep close. Sometimes he nodded like he understood. Sometimes he just held my hand tighter. Meanwhile, I heard fragments of my family's unraveling from a distance. My parents arguing openly now, no shared income to smooth over, resentment, my sister cycling through excuses, telling people I had abandoned them, leaving out the part where they abandoned us first. Their world became smaller. Without me in it, mine became larger, not because of money or freedom, but because I finally had room to breathe, and more importantly, I had room to love without bleeding. One evening, after dinner, my son climbed onto the couch beside me, resting his head on my arm. The living room light was soft. The house was quiet in the way homes are when they are safe. He didn't ask about them this time. He just whispered, "I'm glad it's us." Not a dramatic moment, not a grand speech. Just 6 words that felt like a key turning in a lock. The final lock. The one inside my chest. The one that had been holding back years of ache. I wrapped my arm around him gently, mindful of the healing scar, and we just sat there together, both of us learning how to exist in a life that was finally ours. No noise, no guilt, no obligations, just 2 hearts, healed and healing, beating in quiet rhythm. Weeks turned into months, and a quiet settled over my life, the kind that doesn't announce itself but lingers in the corners of the home. Jack's laughter began to fill the rooms again, soft and unguarded, like a song that had been waiting for the right moment to return. He was healing faster than I had imagined, not just physically, but in ways that no doctor's prescription could measure. His curiosity returned, the way he tilted his head at the smallest details, the way his eyes lit up when he finally finished a puzzle or drew a figure that actually looked like a house instead of just a scribble. I realized that his resilience wasn't born from the surgery alone, but from the love and stability we had built in these last few months quietly, day by day. One morning, as the sun spilled through the living room window, he handed me a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it to find a simple drawing, a stick figure of us holding hands again, but this time there were small hearts above our heads. "Daddy," he said, his voice steady, "this is us forever." I felt my chest tighten, not with anger, not with sadness, but with the weight of relief and pride. He understood, in his own innocent way, what I had tried so hard to teach him, that love isn't measured in money, in appearances, or in convenience. It was in the moments, the presence, the unwavering support. The world beyond our home still held its shadows. My parents occasionally tried to reach out, their messages polite but strained, always dripping with unspoken guilt. My sister, now facing the postponed wedding and mounting frustrations, had learned that life does not bend to entitlement alone. But I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Every unanswered text, every blocked call, was another layer of protection for Jack and for me, another reminder that boundaries are not punishments, they are shields, and in that quiet we thrived. Weekends became little adventures, bike rides in the park, library visits where he could get lost in his favorite stories, evenings spent making macaroni necklaces and elaborate forts in the living room. Every smile, every laugh, every exhausted but satisfied yawn as he fell asleep reminded me that this ordinary, mundane, uninterrupted love was what mattered most. Not the money drained, not the lectures, not the expectations. One night, as I tucked him in and kissed his forehead, he whispered, "Daddy, I'm glad you're my family." I held him a little tighter, feeling the echo of all the pain, all the betrayal, finally dissolve into something stronger. Because he was safe, because he was loved, because we had chosen each other, and that I realized was victory. Not the silence that fell over my parents' accounts, not the canceled luxuries or postponed weddings, not the whispered regrets. They were irrelevant now. Real triumph was here, in the steady rise and fall of his chest, in the warmth of a small hand gripping mine. Quiet, ordinary, unshakable love. I leaned back in my chair that night, the house dark but full, and I allowed myself a rare smile, one without guilt or hesitation. The past had tried to dictate our lives, tried to define what family meant, but we had rewritten the definition. We were enough, more than enough, and in the end that was all that mattered.